By the way guys, just a heads up, this is one of the most major issues in the entire Ultimate Spider-Man series, so you're going to want to read this one. What is going on guys, welcome to this video. My name is Cameron and this is the review for Ultimate Spider-Man issue 99. As you can see by the front cover, we've got Gwen Stacy on the front of it, and that is of course because we had the return of Gwen Stacy in the previous issue. Obviously Peter Parker was like super freaked out about that, but we have so many questions. Now if you remember, the original Clone Saga from years ago actually had the return of Gwen Stacy in that as well. So I think it's pretty obvious that she's returning the Clone Saga because, well, she is a clone. Like, obviously we don't actually know that for sure, but that's our best bet. We also had Mary Jane kidnapped as well by a mysterious kidnapper, and by the looks of it, kind of looks like the silhouette of Peter Parker. We're not too sure. Obviously, I know who it is, but I think you guys would be pretty surprised. Now, in my opinion, the previous issue was so good because we got the involvement of not only, well, kind of Nick Fury, but we also got the Fantastic Four, and I just loved it how Spider-Man could go over to the Fantastic Four and sort of get their input on it, and it was crazy. I mean, Spider-Man came up against himself as Scorpion. Really weird, like, must have like blown his mind a little bit. Of course, we can't also forget the inclusion of Spider-Woman. Now, obviously, this is the first appearance of Spider-Woman in the Ultimate Universe ever, but she did kind of seem to know Peter Parker all too well. Now, obviously, I'm not going to reveal why, but I think you guys are going to be like mind blown by it. Obviously, we know like Spider-Woman is quite a well-known character these days, but this is actually where she came from originally in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. So guys, without any further ado, as I've already said, this is one of the most major issues of the entire Ultimate Spider-Man series, so you're gonna want to read this. So without any further ado guys, let's go and get in to this crazy issue. Alright, so opening up the issue, we are starting from pretty much where the previous issue left off, with Peter Parker discovering that Gwen Stacy is stood in front of him. And I just love how Brian Michael Bendis writes this comic to sort of represent that through Peter's character. Like, he actually gets on the floor and starts believing that he's crazy. Like, it's so awesome. It's like exactly how a character would probably react. I mean, Peter's just discovered that he's got a clone of himself. Then he also ran into Spider-Woman, who shouldn't even exist yet, who he's never seen before. And now Mary Jane's been kidnapped and he's bumped into Gwen Stacy alive again. I mean, it's just one twist and turn after the other, and that is why I love this comic saga so much in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. One of my favourite things as well is the fact that Peter actually just straight up told Gwen Stacy that she died. I mean, other characters usually would have kept that quiet a little bit maybe, you know, just to drag it out a bit. But Peter just straight up said it to Gwen Stacy without hesitating. But anyway, going back over to the kidnapping of Mary Jane, we actually get revealed to us who the kidnapper is. And I just love the reveal how he stood there all sort of evil looking and messed up. And you can see that he's got like this burnt side of his face sort of thing going on. It's pretty crazy. And my favourite thing about that reveal is the way that he says he's going to make her just like him. And then it reveals him and he says, just like me. And that... honestly, that is like one of the craziest psychotic things that I've seen in this Ultimate Spider-Man comic so far. I mean, Jesus. Going back over to the Baxter building and of course the Fantastic Four, they are still trying to figure out what is going on with this clone of Peter Parker that is merged to this Scorpion's body. And this pretty much just leaves more questions than answers from us as the reader, because it just confuses us even more. We want to know what Peter is talking about when he starts blasting off about something called the zoo, and just like, has he been held in a zoo or something like that? I mean, technically, he's a clone of Peter, so he would probably be treated like an animal, you know, because technically, he's not really real, but because he's a clone of a person, he also has his own feelings and stuff, so technically, he is a person, but I don't think he would have been treated like that, and so that's probably where the zoo sort of thing's coming from. Something very important to notice there is that just before the clone of Peter Parker passed out, he said the others, and then was about to blab on about the zoo again, so that's clearly sort of indicating that there could be other clones, and the fact that he said others, which means like there is probably multiple clones of like whatever's going on, is even crazier. And that's what I like about the Clone Saga, is that the characters of these clones or something along those lines kind of drop hints a little bit without you even knowing it, until of course it's revealed later on. But now going back to Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, I think it's pretty obvious, just like the original Clone Saga, that Gwen Stacy has the potential to be another clone, especially because she can't actually remember where she came from. Very similar to Mary Jane being a clone in the Spider-Man 90s cartoon, because in that cartoon, Mary Jane couldn't actually remember where she came from either, or how she got to a certain place. And so that's a fair indicator, but I just love how Peter handles the entire situation. He's just really straight up with Gwen Stacy. And I think overall, this would scare any character. Like, it is not a normal situation at all. And I just love how Gwen Stacy and Peter sort of carry this out through the comic. But of course, now to make things a hell of a lot more complicated, Aunt May has actually stumbled into seeing Gwen Stacy stood there. Now, of course, Gwen Stacy died, and since Peter Parker has a crazy life, it shocks him, but not really that much. But now, guys, we are getting to that major part of the comic that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. This is probably one of the biggest moments in the Ultimate Spider-Man series so far. The events that you can see unfolding in front of you, you can just see the look on Peter Parker's face. It's going to happen right now. Peter Parker reveals to Aunt May that he is Spider-Man. And I remember reading this for the first time and just being like mind blown, like he actually did it. And of course, the only reason he did this is because he physically cannot even begin to explain what is going on. Like, Gwen Stacy's alive, Aunt May, like all of this crazy stuff is happening. And Peter just had no other option. And this is by far one of my favourite moments in the entire comic book, in the entire Ultimate Spider-Man series. And this is why I like the Clone Saga of the Ultimate Spider-Man comics so much, because it leads up to situations like this, but it's done so well. And it's just really cool how Aunt May says to prove it, and he just launches himself onto the ceiling. I thought that was really awesome. But as you can see, Aunt May's putting things together from the past, such as Norman Osborn and Harry Osborn and all of that crazy stuff that was happening in the early issues of the Ultimate Spider-Man series. And it all tracks down to Peter Parker being Spider-Man. And one of the things that actually surprised me was Aunt May's reaction to this. She took it like super bad, like she started freaking out. And of course it was because all this time Peter Parker has lied to her. But it's not necessarily that he's lied to her about being Spider-Man. It's the fact that for the last maybe like year, Peter has lied about everything, like where he was going, like why he's been out so late. And it's just all led up to this, and the entire thing is because he's Spider-Man. And so she just ultimately, no pun intended, freaks out and threatens to kick Peter Parker out, and it's just getting crazy. And then, when things could not get any crazier, Peter Parker's father, Richard Parker, walks through the door. Now, some of you guys are probably thinking, why is Aunt May so chilled about this, like Richard Parker walking through the door, etc. I think, if I remember correctly, I think we'll have to wait until the next issue to find out, but I think, if I remember, it's because Aunt May isn't actually sure if Richard Parker's dead or not, and so when he's actually there, it's no surprise that he's back, because, well, she must have had an idea that Richard Parker could return sometime in the future or something like that, I don't know. But of course, now onto the final page of this issue with the Fantastic Four showing Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. that there is a clone of Peter Parker that exists. And I just love Nick Fury's reaction to this. Like, you can tell that he's freaking out in his own Nick Fury character way, and yet he still sort of knows and comes across as if he knows exactly who this is. And guys, thank you so much for reading this issue. I'm so glad that we got to this issue. Peter Parker revealing that he's Spider-Man to Aunt May. Crazy. Let's go back on camera and talk about what just happened. Didn't I say that this was the craziest issue so far? The most major thing. Peter revealed his identity of being Spider-Man to Aunt May. And of course, Aunt May didn't really take it too well at all. She thinks that Peter's lied to her. And I don't think it's the fact that Peter's lied to her about being Spider-Man. I think it's all the lies that have come from being Spider-Man. So for example, lying about where he's been going when he's been out late and stuff like that. And so yeah, Aunt May doesn't seem too happy about that, and damn. It was also revealed who Mary Jane's kidnapper was, and of course, it's another clone of Peter Parker. His face is pretty messed up, and it looks awesome. The artwork on just like the features of his face and how he's all like messed up is incredible. I absolutely love Mark Bagley's artwork on that piece, it's awesome. Now, I think my favourite thing about this issue and just like the entire Clone Saga as a whole is the fact that the stakes are really high. Like, Peter reveals his identity to Aunt May, Gwen Stacy returns, and then at the end of the issue, Richard Parker, who is Peter's father, returns from the dead. This could actually be Peter Parker's real father. There's so many questions, but you can just see that it's one thing after another. Like, we've got obviously S.H.I.E.L.D. getting involved with Nick Fury now since the Fantastic Four went to them to sort of show them the clone. And what I loved is like, it looked like Nick Fury actually knew who was doing this. Like, he knew that they shouldn't have been doing this and it shouldn't have been happening, but it's almost like he sort of knew who would be stupid enough to do it. So that was awesome. There's just so much stuff going on in this issue and so many things going on in this entire Clone Saga. I mean, what do you guys think is going to happen in the next couple of issues in the rest of this saga? It's just going to get crazier. Of course, as I said during the review, I really liked how Peter sort of straight up said to Gwen Stacy that she was dead. Like, he kind of didn't hold it back or anything, he just asked her all these questions. And then, of course, she didn't really remember where she was coming from, but it did look like she was coming from somewhere that had destruction in it. So it's sort of, if Gwen Stacy is a clone, like, obviously I know, like, all the stuff and everything, but for the sake of you guys, if she was actually a clone, it looks like they broke out or something along those lines. So you'll have to wait and see in the next couple of issues to see what happens with that. But now going over to Mary Jane being kidnapped and it being a clone of Peter Parker, I think one of the worst things about this isn't the fact that Mary Jane has been kidnapped, it's the fact that she's been kidnapped and is in danger from technically Peter Parker himself, and that must be devastating. And obviously, I think one of the worst things is, like, Mary Jane obviously doesn't know whether it is actually the real Peter Parker or not. Like, obviously he's got his face messed up, but that could have happened during the fight that she left him at when he was being Spider-Man, and now he's just sort of gone crazy or anything. So yeah, the worst thing is that Mary Jane doesn't actually know the entire story of what's happening, and obviously Peter Parker doesn't know either, but, you know, like, crazy. Now, obviously, as we're going through this issue, one of my main concerns is the fact that I don't want Brian Michael Bendis and Matt Bagley to try and jam loads of characters into just one issue and one saga. Like, it just seems like they're trying to cram loads of stuff in, so I feel like maybe Peter's father returning could have been left to the next issue, maybe, but of course it got left on a cliffhanger, so I feel like that was maybe a good moment for Peter's father to sort of just jump in the issue there and it end there. So I feel like that was a whole issue. I feel like it actually rounded off really well, and so for that, guys, I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10. Of course, you already know that I love the Clone Saga out of all the other sagas in the Ultimate Spider-Man series. Besides the Hollywood Saga, that's a good one. But yeah, I feel like the character development is actually really good. Like, Peter telling Gwen Stacy that she was already dead and sort of not keeping that a secret from her and trying to get answers and that. It's really awesome, and of course it's leading up and foreshadowing to some other stuff to come in the next issue. Now, of course, guys, remember, if this issue was this crazy, think about what's going to happen in the next issue. Like, what happens from here on out? Well, we're going to have to review the next issue and find out. But guys, until then, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the issue so much. I absolutely loved it. And guys, if you did enjoy it, hit the like button on this video, hit the subscribe button for more reviews of the Ultimate Spider-Man series. And of course, just remember, I do actually tease these comics and these reviews before I upload them on my Twitter as well. So if you want to get teased like that, and of course follow me on Instagram for all the other stuff, yeah, do that. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.